do is put together a little bit of practical content following on from the webinar that Jamie and I did a couple of weeks ago, to link up to the content that you've actually got access to in Able Agent. So as Michelle said, my name's Charlotte and I'm the director of Able Agent, but I'm also an industry trainer. I work with clients up and down the country, normally face to face, but sharpish becoming camera to camera. And we've got lots of content within the Able Agent that's really relevant to you all, particularly at the moment. So when we set this webinar, I think the world we were operating in a week ago when we decided to do this is very different from where we're at today. So it's very, very exciting times that we're now in a position to start really actively promoting our businesses and getting our clients through the doors of properties. But we still need to think about those staff that are working at home. We need to think about their anxieties, I guess, at the moment. But also, I think it's really important that we give them some very practical tools and guidance. And most importantly, from a trainer's point of view, it's about monitoring that they actually act on the things that you want them to do in terms of training. I've put together a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation that I'll run through with you now, just so that you can ideas on screen as I'm doing it. The main content of Able Agent covers estate agency and lettings, but it's very much designed to be a tool to help you sell. But our ethos is completely that we want your teams and yourselves to be your client's trusted professional advisor. So we believe that if you have a really good, confident knowledge of the law, of the Housing Act, for example, and landlord's obligations, then you'll be in a much better position to be able to question your landlords, for example, to find out what they know and what they don't know. And then it's much, much easier to step into that role of being a trusted advisor to suggest a solution. So, we've got film content about upselling to property management. And I think at the moment, whilst people are self-isolating, whilst people and their lives are uncertain, I think there's a huge opportunity for agents to be offering management services to those tenant-find landlords. I'm a landlord myself, and I'm finding it a little bit tricky to try and navigate everything. I'm going through selective licensing applications at the moment, but I'm busy with work, and it's hard sometimes to keep on top of everything that you need to do. So Able Agent is designed to give your team enough knowledge to use that sort of knowledge that comes with experience. So I look back at the negotiator I was when I was 20, 21, 22, compared to now nearly 50. My life experience has taught me an awful lot. And I think while you're younger in the career or whether you're more experienced, there's always something that you can learn. And I think whether you're older in your career and you've been doing it a long time, there's a risk that you get into bad habits as well, which we all do. So it's about understanding that training's not just for your new starters, but it's also to refresh your ideas. So in terms of Able Agent, we really are confident that we're the most comprehensive online training platform out there. Nothing else exists that covers estate agency and lettings and compliance and sales skills and customer service all in one place. So if you've got a negotiator who isn't confident in lettings and doesn't understand lettings law, but is dealing with landlords and vendors and investors walking through the door, they should have that knowledge to be able to be a better advisor to their client. So the reason we did everything in one area is to allow staff to be a bit more pick and mix in terms of the content. So even if on a daily basis you think, oh, that's a challenge, I haven't dealt with that before, you have a resource now in Able Agent to go and have a look at it. So it's about starting with your new starters and anybody who is brand new to the business, but it's also about making sure your existing staff, who might just be experts in one area, have a wider knowledge, or people that are expert in all areas refresh their knowledge. So the Able Agent course as it stands at the moment is 7 modules. And the reason I'm giving you this bit of an overview now is there's so much of the content that we have that really fits with what you should be guiding your teams and your teams should be learning now. So whether you're a negotiator working from home at the moment, thinking I really want to be able to hit the ground running and hit my targets, then we've got sales skills content, we've got really good questioning skills content, we've really got good ideas about how to manage your data and make sure you write the right information in your client records. So all of the modules that we have do what this says on the tin. It's like Ron Seal. So we've got a new starter module and it's basic, any existing staff member, you can go through that because it's got a glossary of terms and it gets you to the feel of the way the online learning works. I watched a Tom Panos webinar the other day, and what he said was brilliant, and I'm going to copy it. He said, online training isn't Netflix. It isn't that it's in one ear and out the other with a film. It's about using it. And Able Agent is very much about giving you ideas and practical tips. So at the moment, we're dealing with vendors or landlords or potential sellers who might be uncertain as to what's going on in the marketplace. They might have so many questions. So our job is to be that trusted professional advisor and give them that information and make sure that they are confident. So you as negotiators or business owners, you should understand consumer protection law. You should understand the rules with estate agency legislation, because then that gives you more confidence in fighting for your fees and explaining why you are worth paying more. That we have. We also cover information such as things like your online sales skills. We cover things like property law. So how much do you understand about what building regs are and permitted development? We've got content about that as well, because understanding permitted development means that you can talk knowledgeably with a potential vendor, or you can talk knowledgeably with an investor. So all of that's covered in the modules, whether it's legal compliance or property law in general. We also cover sales progression. And again, one of the things that at the moment that's going to be so important is keeping your sales together. And you guys know, if you're working with I Am Sold, that is one of the key benefits of auction. A lot of our content talks about that and gives you that language. So whether you've got a tricky sale at the moment or you're looking to spot opportunities for things like auction, that guidance is in there for you to help you. So just as a little overview, we've got 7 modules. You can see them on the screen. There are 20 courses. We're just about to add some content for mental health in the workplace, which is so relevant at the moment. People are struggling. And we want everyone to get something personally out of Able Agent. It's not just about business. So all of the content is a mix of film. So you can sit and just watch the films if you want to, and you can just get a little bit of inspiration and a bit of motivation, or you can use those films to think about how you want to change the way you work in your business or how you manage your teams in the business. So, I mean, just in summary, we've got, new starter tool. It's there to cross-skill your staff, make sure that everyone understands all areas of the business. But predominantly, anything that you work through, whether it's the legislation or whether it's consumer law or whether it's property law, everything's about giving you that knowledge to be sales focused. In this industry, we have to offer excellent customer service, otherwise we don't retain our clients. But we all, no matter what job role we're in, I believe, have a responsibility to spot business. So even if you're in a property management department and all you do is organise the repairs, why shouldn't you feel confident saying to somebody, are you looking to buy any more properties? Or, how many properties do you own? And then you can pass it on to the sales team. But all of that gives you that genuine focus that we're all working together. Times may be tough moving forward for estate agents. And every member of staff should be confident in spotting business opportunities. That could be remortgaging for a landlord. Don't be afraid to ask the question, when was the last time you remortgaged your property portfolio? How useful would it be for us to have a chat with you about that? Could we look at trying to save you some money at the moment? You might be able to refinance and buy more. Loads of different skills that help you spot opportunities. The nice thing about Able Agent is every time you do some e-learning, it's ebooks and it's online, it's videos, you do a quiz at the end of it. And it's quite satisfying because at the end of it, you get that, badge that says, yeah, I've gone through that course and I understand it. And the biggest support queries we get from people on Able Agent at the moment is, I can't find my certificate. Where's my certificate gone? So we know that people really want their certificates. They want to feel that they have that badge to demonstrate what they've learned. And from a manager's point of view, it's a really easy way for you to say to somebody, right, I'd like you to complete the handling inquiries course or the compliance course by such and such a date. Submit your certificate into your online personnel file or to your manager, and then we know that you've done it. And it gives you that CPD tool as well. In terms of the qualification, what you might not realise is that Able Agent was designed to work alongside a new level 3 qualification. And we designed the qualification to recognise what you and your staff, or I don't know who I'm talking to here, it could be negotiators, that you are recognised for what you know. And there are other qualifications out there. We're the only one that covers estate agency and lettings in one exam. So you don't have to do 2 lots of qualification to be able to get yourself qualified if ROPA comes in, the Regulation of Property Agents. So ultimately, if you're sitting in the front of house as a negotiator or a manager and you get involved in sales and lettings, rather than sitting 2 separate qualifications, Able Agent is slightly higher level actually than the Property Mark qualifications, because it's a certificate. The Property Mark qualifications are classed as awards. So our qualification has more credits. People say to me, well, how can you only sit 1 exam and still get the same level of qualification? It's because we've been really clever with the way we've designed it. We know what you already know because we've done your job. I was a negotiator for many years, but we also know where agents struggle and what they don't know. So Able Agent and the CPAP qualification are designed to work together so that you can have access to the content for the qualification, even if you don't want to study it. You know, you have access to it and then you can decide at a later date. Actually, I've done my 7 modules, I've passed all the different quizzes in the different courses, and I'm feeling pretty confident. So rather than you sitting there and saying, right, I'm going to do a qualification, it's more than that. So you start the learning and then you think, actually, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this. Then you enroll and sit the exam if you want to. So it gives you that flexibility. So it's there as a sales tool to help you win more business, but it's also there to help you plan for the future. And if you're a manager, how do I get my staff, motivated by doing a qualification? Well, the easiest way is to make it easy for them and let them feel confident in the knowledge that they have. I had an email from a chap the other day who had started doing some training in the evening, and he emailed me about 10:30 at night, and his email was, God, he says, this is addictive. He said, I only meant to do half an hour and I haven't been able to get off it. Now, from my point of view as a trainer, that's the best feedback I can get, that people are engaged in the content. So the qualification is CPAP, the Certificate in Property Advice and Practice. And that's there to recognise what you know in terms of, the front of house job. So the minute a client walks through your door to the minute that they negotiate a deal and you get them offering on the property, or the sales going through, or the let is ready for them to move in. Then we move on to specialisms in the qualification, which you can choose to do as an additional part of the qualification. It's extra to what you would need for ROPA. So you could get a full qualification in auction. And what we're finding is that people really want to have that badge that says, look, I'm the auction specialist in the business. I've got the auction qualification badge, or I'm the sales progressor and I've got that badge. And it's how you explain that to your clients, because you should be confident in your fees. And if you've got a badge in your qualification that says, I'm the expert in sales progression, why shouldn't you as a business be able to charge more? So it's all about understanding how you use this knowledge and experience to win more business, because ultimately that's what we're all here for. So the qualification itself, you don't sign up until you want to, and you pay separately for that, but we can send you all the detail for the qualification. In terms of a bit of some guidance for where we're at the moment in the business, I've mentioned how pick and mix the content is for Able Agent. And one of the things that I think is going to be so important at the moment, I'm reading all the webinars and I'm watching podcasts and all the people who are thinking that they want to come off Rightmove, or they want to reduce their costs with Zoopla or on the market or whatever. So from my point of view, I've been in this industry since 1994. Your key, your gold, your opportunity is your database. So if your database, if you look at it as a negotiator and you look at your clients, or as a business owner and you look at it and think, there's a lot of gaps in there, we've got a fantastic opportunity at the moment to fill in those gaps. I've trained for many, many years, and I think the database is something that we're using less effectively as time goes on. We're very reliant on being leads coming into us. But the best opportunity for you as a business to grow and annihilate your competition is to have a really well-run database. And all the different opportunities should be categorized well. So if you looked at your database, the first thing I'd be asking is, can you spot those business opportunities quickly? Are you good with the report system in your CRM? Can you click a button and print off all the potential applicants with a property to sell who aren't on the market yet, but they're local? Can you click a button that says, these are all my vendors who really need to sell quickly? can I click a button and say, these are all my investors who are a prospect for full management service? And I've got loads I could talk to you about investors, because they are so varied, you shouldn't categorize them all in one bunch. So can you pull these opportunities out quickly? Because if you can, you and your teams can work much smarter. We're seeing all this social media market, all these CRM campaigns, all of it stems from how well you've recorded your data. Because if you've recorded your prospect investors with a property that they might consider renting out through you and managing through you, then the messaging you can send to them is very different. It could be, how up to date are you with the new electrical check legislation coming in July? Do you need any help? Or stories about things that have happened in your area, whatever it may be. There's loads of really great experts talking about the social media marketing. But your main aim is the database has got to be categorized in a way that you can pull it out effectively. And I'm a great believer that the prospect element of your business should be very clearly manageable. Because one of the other things we should be encouraging our teams to do is keeping a pipeline of business. Now, the computer systems are great. And back in the late 90s, early 2000s, my job was persuading you lot as estate agents to change from mini prints and photos on sales particulars and Rolodexes to a CRM system. So I'm very passionate about the CRM system, but you've got to use it properly. So making sure that you've got all the information accessible to you is hugely important. Can you identify your pipeline of leads? You don't need them all to be in your CRM. I'm a huge believer that my little black book or my phone, whatever it is I have as a negotiator, I should always be available to say, who are my hot prospects? And they could be anything. They could be somebody you've spoken to about mortgage, somebody you've spoken to about auction, somebody you've spoken to about a price reduction, a remortgage, a property to sell, a friend who's moving. Doesn't really matter. But if you keep hold of all of that information, then it doesn't disappear into the black hole of your computer system. Because the databases are great, but it stops that personal relationship with your customer in a lot of cases. So pull a little bit of this pipeline business out. And the other thing about a pipeline is it's not for tomorrow. It's for the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. So it's this huge vision of the future for business that you can have. And if you're a neg and you've got a boss that rings you up and says you're behind on your listings or you're behind on your market appraisals, the first thing you should be looking at is your warm pipeline, your leads that are ready to go, rather than having to dive straight into your database or just waiting for the phone to ring. So think about your categories in your database. Could you have those working harder for you? Could you be thinking of things like the olden days? We used to have the traffic light system. Jamie mentioned it in our former webinar. Hot, warm, cold, red, amber, green, in terms of their motivation to sell. In my old business, we had a button that used to be a needs to sell or a forced seller button, and I could pull that out as a report. So I knew instantly who to speak to get price reductions, who to speak to get auction leads, and it made my life easier. But all of this stems to how well you've questioned your database, how well you know your customers, and how good the information is in it. And if most of it's based on tick boxes, I would challenge you to say that's not good enough. And I would say most of it needs to be notes, because that's the human element. And there will be so much need for human conversations at the moment. And it has to be that you're dealing with empathy. If we're not using empathy in our ability to sell at the moment, then you're missing the opportunity. You're missing the fact that your clients actually need you to help them at the moment. It's not just phone calls to try and spot business opportunities. It's, what do we know about their situation? How can we genuinely help? What advice can we give, whether that's for now or 6 months' time or 12 months' time? It doesn't matter. So how good are the notes on your file? And I look back on my time as a negotiator, and I wouldn't have thought twice about jotting down divorced, deceased estate, financial difficulties. And I wouldn't have even given it a second thought what that meant to the human element behind it. It would have just been how I'd categorize them. So we can't think like that. We have to really genuinely put ourselves into the shoes of the vendor or the buyer or the landlord or whoever we're dealing with, because there may be more people who are struggling at the moment. and being able to empathize with them and genuinely offer knowledgeable professional advice will help you gain that reputation of being the trusted advisor in your area. So go back to your database. How good are your notes on your files? Do you and your teams know your hot buyers really well? Do you know your forced sellers? Do we know why they're a forced seller? How well have you got to know your investors? How are they finding life as a landlord at the moment? Because it's quite tricky out there. There's a lot going on. Even if we're not prepared to go full management now as a landlord, we might be in 6 months' time. So there is a lead for us to keep track of. So this empathy and trust and putting yourself into your customers' shoes is one of the tools that will really help you question effectively and understand what your customers need. So how do we structure these conversations? I mean, there's loads of content in Able Agent, so I'm not going to go into it now. There's loads to help you. And if you want any more webinars or you want me to focus on very specifics, let Michelle at I Am Sold know, and I'm more than happy to put something on and cover very clear topics. But, one of the questions that's so important for us is, how many properties do you own? How are you finding life as a landlord? How are you keeping up to date with legislation? And are you in a selective licensing area? Are you up to date with meeting the deadline for the application? A great question for your vendors at the moment. How urgent was your move before COVID kicked in? And how much has changed? How urgent is it now? There are so many more questions that you need to think about what you ask. And that could be, as a group, sitting down with your manager and you lot as a team deciding, how are we going to structure our conversations? And we mentioned quite a few examples in the previous webinar. So if you haven't seen the webinar with Ben and Jamie, that's also available on the partner page. So go and have a look, because there were some great tips in there as well. So your pipeline, I mentioned this. Don't rely on emails. It's one of those things that we get into habits of always emailing people. And I'm a real person who is anti the automated mail out, because I think it lacks so much skill. And I think getting into the position where you're confident and regularly speaking to your clients, and not everybody wants a phone call, I understand that. Sometimes a text might do, an email, that's fine. But you need to understand and establish who do want to talk to you, who wants to talk to you, and pick the phone up. Get yourself into a routine. Challenge yourself to 7 additional outbound telephone calls per day. However you want to work it, you could set that challenge for yourself or set it for your teams. So think about your hot prospects list and this pipeline. Go back. You've got the opportunity now to go back through all your database and pull out those hot leads and decide what you want those leads to be. Obviously, auction is a huge opportunity. So using some of the I Am Sold training to say, what are the questions we're asking to establish their motivation and get to know what the motivation is. But you should also be really confident in the benefits of auction. And again, in Able Agent, we've got a whole more auction module, and there's loads of content in there to give you that language and that confidence and that style and explaining the benefits of auction. So think forward with your pipeline. It doesn't have to be just in your CRM system or your tasks or your reviews. Make some of those hot leads come to life for you as a negotiator. And if you're a manager, keep your teams talking to you about their pipeline and who's in their business, because then all the hot buyers come to mind much better. We're going to be working from home for quite a while. So those little huddly conversations that you normally have in an office, they won't exist anymore. You won't be able to have that, Nellie's doing this and Brian's doing that. You have to be structured in keeping track of what you're all working on, and bringing it out of your CRM system, in my view, is one of the easiest ways to make it come a little bit more alive. So if we are working with our teams from home, or you are a negotiator working from home and you're really motivated, think about what you're doing with your day. So manage your day. Think about the time. And again, we did a working from home little film that I think is also available via I Am Sold. But think about setting yourself a set bit of time per day where you do outbound calls and you're uninterrupted, the kids are not in the kitchen with you, and you're making outbound calls. And then keep a track of what you got from that. You don't have to win business. It doesn't have to be all about winning business, but think about booking the appointment for another time to warm the business up. Keep the pipeline flowing. Think about your targets. If your company doesn't set targets, set your own. I'm going to make 5 more calls to vendors today, or I'm going to ring 5 more calls to people about mortgage. Whatever it is, you need to think about managing that. If you're a manager, then I would really recommend, if your team are working from home, that you have very structured targets, not in terms of the outcome of how many listings achieved, but how many conversations your team are having. Because if they get confident having those conversations without feeling under too much pressure from you in terms of getting the results, then those conversations will breed more results as time goes on. And as time goes on, they'll be more confident. There's such a mix in our industry of people confident making those calls and those who aren't. We're really good at reacting to a phone call and being helpful, but how many of us are really confident starting from scratch or being cold calling? Luckily, as an industry, most of our calling is warm, so you shouldn't ever have to be cold calling. Think about your flexibility with your teams at home. Ringing people, I mean, it's less important now, people are all at home, but ringing people maybe at 5 o'clock or just before the kids have their tea might be a better time than 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning when everyone's just getting started for their day. So think about, if you are going to schedule these outbound sessions and monitor the results from that, why don't you set that different times for different members of the team? And remember that on your database, you should be putting down when is the best time to call the client. Because if they work shift, there's no point trying to ring them when they're fast asleep at home. Ring them when you know they're going to be available. And all these little tips, all these little tips will help you generate more business from your database, because your database is absolutely the core for where your life becomes easier, whether you're a negotiator or a manager. So think about the health of your team as well as the moment. So if you're a manager watching this or watching on catch up, think about how are they coping? You know, is there anybody in your team that they can turn to? Who's the person in your business that's the one who's a good listener, that's prepared to help? And who's the person who's really good at ideas? There needs to be an ideas person in the business, because if I'm sitting working from home and I'm struggling with how do I make these calls, I'm not very confident about certain areas of my business, who is the person I'm going to talk to? And we all need to know who that person is. We need to know who the person is if we're upset or we're worried. So thinking about managing your team, we've got targets, we need to win business, but we've also got to have a level of empathy, not just with our customers, but with the team that we're working with as well. And I think if you build all that together, it'll give you the opportunity to come out of this. It's a difficult time, I know that, but if you can get out of this with a business that is robust, with a really strong database and a happy, confident team, then that's one of the best steps in the right direction. On the screen at the moment, because I'm nearly done, I don't know what time it is, 25 minutes, we're doing all right, not boring you too much, I hope. We've got a list of the films on Able Agent that will help. So the first one, the importance of notes. I'm a huge believer in the quality of the notes that you put on your system. And I think it's the most important part of what you do is telling the story of your customer, and that's in notes. You can't tell a story with a drop-down box or a tick box. Your reviews and tasks, are you making the most of those? How often are we talking to people? Hot calling, that's something that I lived and breathed as a negotiator. We spent so much time making outbound calls. So we've got a film all about that. Pipeline of business, I've talked about that today. It's so important to think about how you decide what you want in your pipeline, what you record, how you record it, and how you monitor it. Empathy and trust, we've got a film on that. We've got loads of content about phone skills. I'm a huge believer that customer service starts from a good phone call. Really good questioning, and there's loads of guidance as to how to create good questions, as well as some suggestions on questions. So if I was in your shoes, I'd be thinking of the questions that suit you. Your style might not be the same as my style, so find questions that get the story for you, because the question is about getting the story. And you'll all have had, training in the past of open and closed questions, but it's really difficult to put it into practice. So repeat those films and get some ideas from it. Features and benefits, fantastic method of understanding how to sell. If you really understand what your customers' needs are, what they're worried about, maybe they've had 3 sale falls through in the past and they're really worried about that. If I understand that with my customer, it's much easier for me to match the benefits of my services, so auction, and match that to their emotional needs, not just, well, it's speed and security. how does that affect me that because of the problems that I've had in the past as your customer? Overcoming objections, always a great bit of knowledge there for anybody. So have a look at that film, it's great. Registering your buyers or your tenants on your mailing list and categorizing your mailing lists, loads of ideas as to how could you categorize your list better. You know, are you making the most of the way your system works for you? And if you can't get it all out of the system, what could you do to give you that access to that information? Thinking about all your different buyer types. I'm a great believer that not all investors are the same. So how do you have different conversations with different types of investors? We all know about cross-selling. Huge opportunity at the moment to be cross-selling for landlords into full management. Huge opportunity with mortgage. All of those things are necessary at the moment. Interest rates have never been so cheap. And don't assume that all your clients have the same knowledge you do, because they really don't. So those conversations are worth having for these people. So do it. Booking the perfect market appraisal. If you want high fees, it starts from the first minute that you try and generate that market appraisal and you actually try and book it into the appointment, into somebody's diary. That's where you are able to impress. So if you can do that really well, then you're laughing. Get to know your different types of vendors, really get to know auction. It will absolutely stand you in good stead. I worked in auction in the mid to late 90s, so it's a long time ago, and it was a much harder job persuading people to put their property at auction then than it is now. And I have a huge belief that auction is a fantastic tool for us moving forward. And if you're not confident on how to explain it, use the auction module in the films. Ben and Jamie did them with me, so they're really relevant to anyone on the partner network. Think about how to upsell to property management. Really good tips in there to persuade you to move your landlord from tenant find only. They should be doing it at the moment. They really should. It's a tough time. I'm a landlord. I've just instructed an agent to look after my properties because it's just getting a bit too complicated and a bit busy. And then all your vendor contact and landlord contact. So as an overview, we've got so much content in there, and I hope I've given you a little bit of a feel as to how you can apply it to where we're sitting at the moment in a COVID point of view. It's really rubbish out there, and I feel for everybody at the moment. You must be feeling uncertain if you're going back to work, uncertain if you're not going back to work. But all I can suggest is that you give yourself the opportunity to be as skilled as you possibly can be, because that will give you options for the future in terms of hitting your targets, whether you want to go self-employed, whether you want to change companies, whether you want to change career. But the more knowledge and skills you have, the better placed you are to make those decisions. One other thing on my link I'll share with Michelle, we've got a little, we've done a hookup with Virtual College as well, and they've got a little free certificated course to say that you are, you know how to prevent COVID-19. So you understand that you've ticked all the relevant boxes. So I'll put that link on the Facebook page with Michelle as well. A really good message to show your staff, show your teams that you're taking it seriously. And if they follow this little course, it's all about learning. No matter what area of the business you're in, there's always an opportunity to learn and grow.